Chapter 1 Teaching. If I knew anything about psychology, I'd be able to blame all my troubles on my miserable childhood in Ireland. That terrible childhood took away my confidence and filled me with self-pity. It made me afraid of my emotions, jealous of other people, unable to obey orders, and frightened of the opposite sex. It also stopped me from making progress in the world and made me unfit, almost, for human society. So, it's surprising that I ever managed to become a teacher. I'm very proud of surviving all those years in the classrooms of New York. There should be special prizes for people who have survived miserable childhoods and become teachers. When I taught in New York City high schools for 30 years, no one listened to me except my students. Outside the school I was so unimportant that no one noticed me. Then I wrote a book about my childhood, and I was suddenly famous. When the book became a bestseller and was translated into 30 languages, I couldn't believe it. My first book, Angela's Ashes, came out in 1996 when I was 66. The second, Tis, came out in 1999 when I was 69. My new writer friends had written their first books when they were in their 20s. So, why did it take me so long? I was teaching, that's why. Not in college or university, where you have plenty of time for writing and other activities. But in 4 different New York City public high schools. When you teach 5 high school classes a day, 5 days a week, you're too tired to go home and write great literature. After a day of 5 classes, your head is filled with the noise of the classroom. In Tis I wrote about my life in America and how I became a teacher. After it came out, I felt guilty that I hadn't talked enough about teaching. In America, doctors, lawyers, army officers, actors, television people, and politicians are admired and rewarded. Not teachers. Teachers are spoken to politely, but they aren't respected. They're congratulated on having such long vacations. When teachers stop working, they disappear into the shadows, hoping that one child will remember them. Keep dreaming, teacher. You won't be celebrated. You imagine a future filled with success. Your lessons will be perfect, your students will be pleasantly surprised. Principals and other important people will hear the sounds of excitement from your room. You'll win prizes, Teacher of the Year, Teacher of the Century. You'll be invited to Washington. President Eisenhower will shake your hand. Newspapers will ask you, an ordinary teacher, for your opinion on education. This will be big news. A teacher is asked for his opinion. Wow! You'll be on television. Imagine, a teacher on television. They'll fly you to Hollywood, where you'll star in movies about your own life. But this won't be the end of the story. After evenings in the company of the most beautiful female movie stars, you'll discover the emptiness of their lives. You'll listen guiltily as they tell you how much they admire you. You've become a Hollywood star because of your caring attitude toward your students. And they, the beautiful movie stars, are ashamed of the uselessness of their Hollywood lives. If they left Hollywood, they, too, could enjoy the rewarding pleasures of teaching the future dock workers, typists, and store assistants of America. It must feel wonderful, they say, to work every day with the young people of America. Your low pay is unimportant. Your real reward is the light in your students' eyes as they bring you gifts from their grateful and admiring parents, cookies, bread, and homemade wine from the mothers and fathers of your 170 students of McKee Vocational High School, Staten Island, in the city of New York. Chapter 2: A Sandwich Situation. It is March 1958. I sit at my desk in an empty classroom in McKee High School. In a minute the bell will ring, and the students will rush in. What will they say if they see me at the desk? Hey, look! He's hiding. They know everything about teachers. You sit at the desk because you're scared or lazy. You're using the desk as a wall. You should get out there and stand. Be a man. If you make one mistake on your first day, your students will remember it for months. The kids are 16 years old. They've been in school for 11 years. So, teachers come, teachers go. But kids watch, study, judge. They know body language, voice, general attitude, and appearance. They don't discuss these things with each other. After 11 years, they just know, and they pass the information on to the next group. It's a mistake to arrive early. It gives you too much time to think about what's going to happen. Where did I get the idea that I was brave enough to face American teenagers? Stupidity. These are the 1950s and newspapers report the unhappiness of young Americans. They have no hope. Life is meaningless. All adults are dishonest. What's the purpose of life? They're so unhappy that they join gangs and fight other gangs. If one of them dies, there's great public anger, and schools and teachers are blamed for not doing their jobs. Vocational schools were seen as places for students who were not smart enough for other high schools. They weren't respected. It didn't matter to the public that thousands of young people wanted to be mechanics, machine operators, or electricians. Those young people didn't want to learn about history, art, or literature. But kids thought, if we have to sit in these boring classes, we'll do it. We'll try to be nice to the teachers for 4 years, and then we'll be free. Here they are. The door hits the wall with a loud noise. Why can't they just walk into the room, say, "Good morning," and sit? Oh, no. They have to shout and push. One says, "Hey," in a playfully violent way, and another one says, "Hey," in reply. They insult each other, ignore the late bell, and are in no hurry to sit down. Look, there's a new teacher up there and new teachers don't know anything. So, bell. Teacher. New guy. Who is he? Who cares? They talk to friends across the room, sit lazily in desks that are too small for them, stretch out their legs, laugh if someone falls over them. They stare out the window or over my head at the American flag. They cut their names on desktops with small knives next to where their fathers cut their names long ago. Couples sit together, hold hands, whisper, and look lovingly into each other's eyes. 3 boys at the back tilt their chairs against the closets and sing pop songs, telling the world that they're just teenagers in love. 5 times a day they push into the room. 5 classes, 30 to 35 in each class. Teenagers. In Ireland we saw them in American movies, angry-looking, never smiling. Driving around in cars, and we wondered why they were angry and unsmiling. They had food and clothes and money. And they were still mean to their parents. There were no teenagers in Ireland, not in my world. You were a child. You went to school until you were 14. If you weren't polite to your parents, they hit you across the face with a belt. You grew up, got a boring job, got married, drank your beer on a Friday night, and kept your wife busy with babies. In a few years you went to England to work as a builder or to join the army. The problem of the sandwich started when a boy named Petey asked the class, "Does anyone want a sandwich?" "Are you joking?" laughed a boy named Andy. "Your mother must hate you, giving you cold meat sandwiches like that." Petey threw his brown paper sandwich bag at Andy, and the class cheered excitedly. The bag landed on the floor between the blackboard and Andy's desk. I came from behind my desk and made the first sound of my teaching career, "Hey." They ignored me. I moved toward Petey and made my first teacher statement, "Stop throwing sandwiches." Petey and the class looked shocked. This new teacher, just stopped a good fight. New teachers should look the other way or send for the principal. Benny called out from the back of the room. "Hey, teacher man, he already threw the sandwich." The class laughed. One boy covered his mouth and said, "Stupid." And I knew he was talking about me. I wanted to knock him out of his seat, but that would be the end of my teaching career. Also, he was enormous. The class waited. What would this new teacher do? Professors of education at New York University never taught you how to manage flying sandwich situations. Should I say, "Hey, Petey, come here and pick up that sandwich"? Should I pick it up myself and throw it into the wastepaper basket? They had to recognize I was boss. I was strong. I wasn't going to accept this kind of behavior. I picked up the sandwich, took it out of its bag, and ate it. It was my first act of classroom management. 34 boys and girls stared at me in shocked silence. I could see the admiration in their eyes. They'd never seen a teacher pick up a sandwich from the floor and eat it in front of the class before. Sandwich man. When I'd finished, I made a ball of the paper bag and threw it into the wastepaper basket. The class cheered. "Wow," they said. "Did you see that? He eats the sandwich. He hits the basket." Wow, I felt in total control of the classroom. I could do nothing wrong. Fine, except I didn't know what to do next. I was there to teach English, and wondered how to move from a sandwich situation to spelling or grammar. My students smiled until they saw the principal's face in the door window. He opened the door and said, "A word, Mr. McCourt." Petey whispered, "Hey, mister. Don't worry about the sandwich." The class said, yeah, to show me that they were on my side if I had trouble with the principal. Outside the classroom, he said, "I'm sure you understand, Mr. McCourt, that teachers shouldn't eat their lunch at 9 o'clock in the morning in their classrooms. In front of these boys, and Il-11 gives children the wrong idea. What would happen if all the teachers began to eat their lunches in class? Especially in the morning, we have enough trouble trying to stop the kids eating in class." I wanted to tell him the truth about the sandwich and how well I'd managed the situation. I wanted to say that it wasn't my sandwich. But if I did, it might be the end of my teaching career. So I said nothing. The principal said he was there to help me because, I seemed to need help. "I agree you had their full attention," he said. "But can you do it in a different way? Try teaching. That's why you're here, young man. Teaching. Now that's all. Remember, no eating in class for teacher or students." I said, "Yes, sir," and he waved me back to the classroom. The class said, "What did he say?" "He said I shouldn't eat my lunch in the classroom at 9 o'clock in the morning." "That's unfair. You weren't eating lunch." Petey said, "I'll tell my mom you liked her sandwich." "All right, Petey, but don't tell her you threw it away." No. She'd kill me. She's from Sicily. They get excited over there in Sicily. Tell her it was the most delicious sandwich I ever had in my life. Okay. Chapter 3: A Problem with Sheep. It was my fault. Instead of teaching, I told stories because stories kept the kids quiet and in their seats. In the teacher's cafeteria, the more experienced teachers warned me, "Son, tell them nothing about yourself. They're kids, remember. You're the teacher. Don't tell them about your private life. They're not your natural friends. They can smell it when you're going to teach a real lesson on grammar. They'll know if you're even thinking about grammar or spelling. They'll put up their hands and ask you about your childhood and your hobbies. If you're not careful, you'll answer all their questions. They'll go home without knowing anything about grammar but knowing everything about your life. They'll carry bits and pieces of your private life in their heads forever, and you'll never get them back. Your life, man. It's all you have. Tell them nothing." The advice was wasted. I had to learn about these things in my own way. On my second day at McKee, a boy asks a question that sends me into the past. It affects the way that I teach for the next 30 years. Joey Santos calls out, "Hey, teacher man, call me Mr. McCourt." Yeah. Okay. So, are you Scottish or something? No. I'm not Scottish. I'm Irish. Joey looks interested. Oh, yeah? What's Irish? I talk about Ireland for a short time, but there are other questions. Don't let them control the classroom. Be strong. Show them who's boss. Tell them, open your notebooks. Time for the spelling list. Oh, teacher, oh man. Spelling. Do we have to? Boring spelling list. They pretend to hit their heads on desks, hide their faces in their arms. They beg to go to the bathroom. We thought you were a nice guy. Why do all these English teachers have to do the same old thing? Same old spelling lessons, same old vocabulary lessons, same old garbage. Can't you tell us more about Ireland? Hey, teacher man. Joey again. Joey, I told you my name is Mr. McCourt. Yeah. So, mister, did you go out with girls in Ireland? No. We went out with sheep. What do you think we went out with? There's an explosion of laughing. This teacher. Crazy. Talks funny. Goes out with sheep. Lock up your sheep. Excuse me. Open your notebooks, please. We have a spelling list to do. More laughing. Will sheep be on the list? I thought my answer had been smart, but it was a mistake. There'll be trouble. Some students will certainly report me. Oh, Mom, oh, Dad, oh, Mr. Principal, guess what teacher said in class today? Bad things about sheep. I'm not ready for this. It's not teaching. When will I be tough enough to walk into the room, get their immediate attention, and teach? Around the school there are quiet, serious classes where teachers are in control. In the cafeteria older teachers tell me, yeah, it takes at least 5 years. Next day the principal sends for me. He sits behind his desk, smoking a cigarette, repeating into the telephone, I'm sorry. It won't happen again. New teacher, I'm afraid. I'll speak to him. He puts the phone down. Sheep. What's this about sheep? Sheep. I don't know what to do with you. There are complaints about you. First the sandwich, now the sheep. My phone doesn't stop ringing. Parents are really angry. You've been in the building for 2 days, and for 2 days you've been in trouble. How do you do it? Why did you have to tell these kids about the sheep? I'm sorry. They kept asking me questions, and I was angry. They were only trying to keep me away from the spelling list. I thought the sheep thing was funny at the time. 13 parents want me to fire you. I was only joking. No, young man. No jokes here. You're the teacher. When you say something to the kids, they believe every word. I'm sorry. This time I'll forget it. I'll tell the parents you've just got off the boat from Ireland and don't understand American ways. But I was born here. Could you be quiet for 1 minute and listen while I save your life? This time you won't be punished. If you want to go up in this system, principal, assistant principal, guidance counselor, you have to be more careful. Sir, I don't want to be principal. I just want to teach. Yeah, they all say that. You'll soon understand. These kids will give you gray hair before you're 30. It was clear that I had different ideas about teaching. I didn't like classes where the lesson was king and the students were nothing. That reminded me of my school in Ireland. Why couldn't the principal invite me to do what I wanted with the class? Then I could tell the students to lie on the floor and go to sleep. What? I said, go to sleep. Why? Think about it while you're lying on the floor. They'd lie on the floor. I'd ask a girl to sing a gentle song. Everything would get quiet. The bell would ring, and they'd be slow off the floor. They'd leave the room, relaxed and puzzled. Please don't ask me why I'd do that with them. I just would. Chapter 4 Stories. So, teacher, how did you come to America? I tell them about my return to America when I was 19. I had no idea I'd ever become a teacher. I never dreamed I could climb so high in the world. Except for one new book in my suitcase, everything about me was old and had been used before. Everything in my head was old, too. Parents, teachers, and churchmen had filled it with religion and Ireland's long sad history of pain and suffering. I told them about my first years in New York, working in low-paid jobs. Then my 2 years in the army. After that I went to college to become a teacher. So, Mr. McCourt, what was it like growing up in Ireland? I'm 27 years old, satisfying these American teenagers with journeys into my past. I never thought my past would be useful. Why would anybody want to know about my miserable life? Then I realized my father did the same thing when he told us stories by the fire. I have arguments with myself. I'm telling stories, but I should be teaching. I am teaching. Storytelling is teaching. Storytelling is a waste of time. What can I do? I can't teach any other way. You're dishonest. You're cheating our children. They don't seem to think so. I'm a teacher in an American school telling stories of my childhood in Ireland. They learn about my 3 brothers. My father, who was always drunk, left us when I was 10 years old. A baby sister died, twin boys died. My mother begged for food and clothes, but she refused to let anyone take us away from her. A rich lady once offered to buy her baby, my brother Malachi, but she said no. Years later, one told her she was wrong not to sell Malachi. Without Malachi, I said, there'd be more food for the rest of us. My mother replied, well, I offered her you, but she wasn't interested. Girls in the class say, oh, Mr. McCourt, that was wrong of your mother. People shouldn't offer to sell their children. You're not so ugly. Boys in the class say, well, he's not very handsome, either. Only joking, Mr. McCourt. You got any more stories? No, no more stories. This is an English class. Parents are complaining. Oh, Mr. McCourt, tell us how you became a teacher. I tell them about my 4 years at New York University. I worked nights to help pay for my course. I was always tired. I fell asleep in libraries. The professor of education warned us about the difficult days ahead. I learned that teaching could be complicated. I learned about lesson plans and different methods of teaching. I had a bitter experience with love. I liked my girlfriend, June, very much, but I left her because she had lots of other boyfriends. I could never understand why she behaved like that. In the end, I managed to get my teacher's license. Hey, Mr. McCourt, did you ever do real work? Not teaching, but, real work. Are you joking? Teaching is harder than working on the docks. How many of you have relatives working along the waterfront? Half the class, mostly Italian, a few Irish. Before I came to this school I worked on the Manhattan, Hoboken, and Brooklyn docks because it was difficult for me to find a teaching job. Schools told me, sorry, your accent's going to be a problem. What will parents say when their kids come home from school with Irish accents? Work on the docks was easier. While you were working with your body, your brain had a vacation. But it was often rough. There were fights and I learned to be brave. When I tell stories about the docks, the kids look at me in a different way. One boy says it's strange to have a teacher who worked like a normal person. The boy says he used to think he wanted to work on the docks because the money was good. You could steal things easily. But his father was angry with him, and you don't argue with your father in an Italian family. His father said, if this Irishman can become a teacher, you can, too. Forget the docks. You might make money, but what good is that when you can straighten your back? Chapter 5 Open Day. Twice a year at McKee we had open school day and open school night, when parents visited the school to see how their children were progressing. Teachers sat in classrooms talking to parents or listening to their complaints. Most visiting parents were mothers because that was the job of the woman, but sometimes a whole family might come to visit the teacher. And the room was crowded with fathers, mothers, and small children. The women talked to each other in a friendly way. But the men sat quietly at the desks. My first time at McKee, I had a student monitor, Norma, who organized the parents waiting to see me. First, I had to get past the subject of my accent, especially with the women. When I opened my mouth, they said, "Oh, my God, what a nice accent." Then they told me about their grandparents, who'd also come from Ireland. They wanted to know everything about me. They said it was wonderful I was a teacher because most Irish people became policemen or worked in churches. Finally, they asked how their little Harry was doing. I had to be careful if the dad was sitting there. If I criticized Harry, the dad might go home and hit him. If other students heard about it, they'd learn not to trust me. I was learning that teachers and kids have to help each other in front of parents, principals, and the world in general. I said positive things about all my students. They paid attention, they were never late, they were enthusiastic, they all had a bright future. And the parents should be pleased. Dad and Mom looked at each other with a proud smile. Or they were puzzled and said, "Are you sure you're talking about our kid? Our Harry?" "Oh, yes. Harry. Does he behave himself in class? Is he polite?" "Oh, yes. He always has something to say in our discussions." "Oh, yeah? That's not the Harry we know. He must be different in school because at home he's an unpleasant little animal. He doesn't say a word at home. Never does anything. He just listens to pop music all day." The dad hated pop music. Elvis Presley was the worst thing that America ever produced. He wanted to throw the record player in the trash. Other parents became impatient and asked if we could stop talking about Elvis Presley. Harry's parents told them to stop complaining and wait. It was a free country, and nobody was going to interrupt their interview with this nice teacher from Ireland. But the other parents said, "Hurry up. We haven't got all night. We're working people, too." One didn't know what to do. I said thank you to the parents, hoping they would leave. But the dad said angrily, "Hey, we're not finished yet." Norma, my student monitor, understood my problem and took control of the situation. She calmly passed around a sheet of paper for the parents' names and phone numbers. "Mr. McCourt will contact you," she said. The parents stopped complaining and congratulated Norma on her intelligence. "You should be a teacher yourself," they said. She told them she had no interest in being a teacher. She wanted to work for a travel company and get free tickets everywhere. One mother said, "Oh, you don't want to stay at home with a family and kids? You'd be a great mother." Then Norma said the wrong thing. "No," she said, "I don't want kids. Kids are terrible. You have to wash them and feed them and then come to school to see how they're doing and you're never free." A few minutes ago, parents were congratulating her on her intelligence. Now they felt insulted by her opinions on parents and kids. One father angrily destroyed the sheet of paper with line names and phone numbers. He threw it toward the front of the room where I sat. He picked up his coat and told his wife, "Let's get out of here. This place is a madhouse." His wife shouted at me, "Don't you have any control over these kids? If this one was my daughter, I'd beat her. She shouldn't insult the mothers of America like that." My face burned with embarrassment. I wanted to apologize to the parents in the room and the mothers of America. I wanted to tell Norma, "Go away. You've ruined my first open school day." She stood by the door calmly saying good night to the parents, pretending not to notice their angry stares. Now what should I do? Where was the book by a professor of education that could help? 15 parents still sat in the room waiting to hear about their sons and daughters. What should I say to them? Norma spoke again and my heart began to sink. "Ladies and gentlemen, I did a stupid thing and I'm so sorry. It wasn't Mr. McCourt's fault. He's a good teacher. He's new, you know, just here a few months, so he's just a learning teacher. I was wrong to say those things because I got him into trouble and I'm sorry. Then she began to cry and a number of mothers rushed toward her while I sat at my desk. It was Norma's job to call the parents up, one by one, but she was surrounded by a group of mothers. I didn't know what to do. Should I act independently and say, "Next"? The parents seemed more interested in Norma than in the future of their children. When the end of meeting bell rang, they smiled and left, saying this visit with me had been nice, and good luck in my teaching career. Maybe Polly's mother was right. On my second open school day she told me I was a cheat. She was proud of her Polly, future electrician, nice kid who planned to start his own business one day. He wanted to marry a nice girl, have a family, and stay out of trouble. I was angry with her. But, at the back of my head a little voice filled me with doubt. Maybe I was a cheat. Maybe I wasn't a good teacher. I asked my kid about his day in school, and he tells me about stories of Ireland and you coming to New York. Stories, stories, stories. You know what you are? A cheat. And I'm saying that kindly, trying to help. I wanted to be a good teacher. I wanted to fill my students' heads with spelling and vocabulary. I wanted to help them have a better life, but I didn't know how. The mother said she was Irish, married to an Italian, and could see all my secrets. She knew my game. When I told her I agreed with her she said, "Ooh, you agree with me? You actually know you're a cheat." I'm just trying to do my best. They ask me questions about my life and I answer them. They don't listen when I try to teach English. They look out the window. They sleep. They eat sandwiches. They want the bathroom. Why don't you teach them what they need to learn, spelling and big words? What will my son, Polly, do when he goes out into the big world and he can't use big words? I told Polly's mother that I hoped to be a good teacher one day, confident in the classroom. But until then, I was going to continue trying. I don't know why, but that made her emotional. She started crying and looked in her handbag for a handkerchief. I offered her mine, but she shook her head and asked, "Who does your washing?" That's the saddest looking gray handkerchief I've ever seen in my life. Your shoes, too. I've never seen such sad shoes. No woman would ever let you buy shoes like them. It's easy to see you've never been married. She brushed the tears from her eyes with the back of her hand. Do you think my Polly can spell handkerchief? I don't think so. It's not on the list. Do you see what I mean? You people have no idea. You don't have handkerchief on the list, but he'll need handkerchiefs all his life. Every day Polly comes home telling us these stories and we don't need to hear them. We've got our own troubles. It's easy to see that you're new in this country. No, I'm not new in this country. I was born here. I was in the army here. I worked on the docks. I graduated from New York University. See, she said. That's what I mean. I ask you a simple question and you give me the story of your life. Be careful, Mr. McCurd. These kids don't need to know the life story of every teacher in the school. Just give them spelling and words, Mr. McCurd. And the parents of this school will thank you forever. Forget the storytelling. If we want stories, we've got a TV guide at home. Chapter 6 Grammar and Gibberish. I thought about what Polly's mother said and realized it was time to take control. Organization is everything. I wanted to start again, make plans for every lesson. I was the captain of this ship, and I was going to choose its direction. No more stories, I told my students. Your English teacher is going to teach English and won't be stopped by little teenage tricks. Take out your notebooks. That's right, your notebooks. I wrote on the board, John went to the store. There was a storm of complaints. What's he doing to us? English teachers are all the same. Old John goes to the store again. All right. What's the subject of the sentence? Yes, Mario. That's easy. It's all about a guy who wants to go to the store. Yes, that's what the sentence is about. But what's the subject? It's one word. Yes, Donna. I think Mario is right. It's all about, no, Donna. The subject here is one word. What do you mean? What's the problem? Aren't you studying Spanish? Don't you have grammar in Spanish? Doesn't Miss Grober tell you the parts of a sentence? Yeah, but she's not always bothering us about John going to the store. My head felt hot and I wanted to shout, why are you so stupid? Why do I have to waste my time with you when outside spring birds are singing in the morning sun? Why do I have to look at your silly, bad-tempered faces? You're not hungry. You're well clothed and warm. You're getting a free high school education and you're not even slightly grateful. Learn the parts of a sentence. Am I asking too much? Why can't you just look at this sentence and, for the first time in your miserable teenage existence, try to learn? But they were smart. They had a mysterious way of knowing that if John went to the store was the limit of my grammatical knowledge. I gave them a serious look and sat at my desk. Enough. I couldn't continue pretending to be a grammar teacher. I said, why did John go to the store? They looked surprised. Hey, man, what's this? This isn't grammar. I'm asking you a simple grammar question. Why did John go to the store? Can't you guess? A hand went up. Yes, Ron. I think John went to the store to get a book on English grammar. Why? Because he wanted Mr. McCourt to think he was smart. And why did he want Mr. McCourt to think that? Because John has a girlfriend called Rose, and she's a good girl and she understands grammar. She's going to graduate and become a secretary in a big company in Manhattan. John doesn't want to look stupid in front of her because he wants to marry her. That's why he goes to the store. He's going to be a good boy and study his book. When he doesn't understand something, he'll ask Mr. McCourt because Mr. McCourt knows everything. When John marries Rose, he's going to invite Mr. McCourt to the wedding. Thank you, Ron. There was an explosion of cheering in the class, but Ron hadn't finished. His hand went up again. Yes, Ron. When John got to the store, he didn't have any money, so he had to steal the grammar book. When he tried to walk out of the store, the police were called, and now he's in Sing Sing prison and poor Rose is crying. Poor Rose, the class said sadly. The boys wanted to know where she lived. Girls dried their eyes. But Kenny Ball, the class tough guy, said that the story was just a lot of trash. He said, teacher writes a sentence on the board, and suddenly a guy steals a book and goes to Sing Sing. It's all trash, and this isn't a real English class. Ron said, so can you do better? All these stories don't mean anything. They won't help us get a job. The bell rang and they left. The next day, Ron put up his hand again. Hey, teacher, what would happen if you played around with those words? What do you mean? If you wrote, to the store John went. How about that? Same thing. John's still the subject of the sentence. Okay. What about when John to the store? Same thing. It still has a meaning. But you could make it meaningless. If you said to someone, John's store to the went, they'd think it was gibberish. What's gibberish? Language without any meaning. I had a sudden idea. I said, psychology is the study of the way people behave. Grammar is the study of the way language behaves. Go on, teacher man. Write the word on the board. They like big words. They take them home and frighten their families with them. Psychology. Who knows it? It's when you study crazy people before you put them in a madhouse. The class laughed. Yeah. Like this school, man. I said, if someone acts crazy, the psychologist studies them to discover what's wrong. If someone talks in a funny way and you can't understand them, then you're thinking about grammar. Like, John's store to the went. So it's gibberish, right? I continued. They liked that word and they wrote it in their notebooks. And I felt proud. They said it to each other and laughed. After teaching for 4 years, I'd managed to teach them one new word. In 10 years' time, they'd hear gibberish and think of me. Something was happening. They were beginning to understand what grammar was. If I continued like this, I might understand it myself.